Yesterday, Donald Trump did what he does. He denigrated entire countries and communities by wondering aloud during an official meeting where there were people, some of whom were his political opponents and likely to squeal, why we should take immigrants from, quote, shithole countries in Africa and the Caribbean. Multiple times he said that. Again, this was not like while he's sitting in bed with a cheeseburger, like watching Fox News. He was with Republican and Democratic senators and their staff, and so that came out. Now, he is going to deny that he said that, and so he tweeted this morning. The language used by me at the DACA meeting was tough, but this was not the language used. What was really tough was the outlandish proposal made, a big setback for DACA, because what he cares about is the Dreamers. He wants to help the Dreamers. He went on to say, never said anything derogatory about Haitians other than Haiti is obviously a very poor and troubled country. Never said, quote, take them out. Fact check, he did say that. Made up by Dems. I have a wonderful relationship with Haitians. Probably should record future meetings. Unfortunately, no trust. It usually works out well when presidents start recording all their meetings, historically. But yeah, so he is denying it. So let's turn to one of the individuals that was at the meeting. This is Senator Dick Durbin.
As Senator Graham made his presentation, the president interrupted him several times with questions, and in the course of his comments, said things which were hate-filled, vile, and racist. He used those words advisedly. I understand how powerful they are, but I cannot believe that in the history of the White House, in that Oval Office, any president has ever spoken the words that I personally heard our president speak yesterday. You've seen the comments in the press. I have not read one of them that's inaccurate.
I disagree in part. Maybe they've never literally said shithole countries, but I'm sure presidents historically have said some pretty awful stuff.
Have you ever heard those recordings of Nixon or LBJ?
Yeah.
Or he's talking to his tailor. He's like talking about his bunghole. You know, I mean, Jesus Christ.
That's one of the ones
LBJ.
that stood out. Yeah, yeah. So he might not have said shithole, but he said bunghole.
Sure.
So similar, I guess. But in this next clip, you're going to see a little bit more of specifically what he said, and again, specifically about Haitians.
To no surprise, the president started tweeting this morning denying that he used those words. It is not true. He said these hate-filled things, and he said them repeatedly. When the question was raised about Haitians, for example, we have a group that have temporary protected status in the United States because they were the victims of crises and disasters and political upheaval. The largest group's El Salvador, the second is Honduran, and the third is Haitian. And when I mentioned that fact to him, he said, Haitians, do we need more Haitians?
And suggested perhaps, fully at random, that perhaps instead we could have more people from Norway. Just coincidentally, it was Norway, which I spent 6 weeks in, I think, this year, and was a lovely country full of very inviting people who have a political and economic system that I would love for our country to move much closer to.
Yeah, I was going to say,
but are also notably quite white, although not universally, much more so than Haiti, perhaps. So that could have tied into why he suggested Norway.
Well, I was going to ask, was everybody you met itching to come here? Were they all like, how can we get to the United States? I went to the doctor and didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
And I really feel like, well, this isn't freedom at all.
And it made me feel like a freeloader when I walked out without going bankrupt. And so I want to feel like I'm invested in the system. And in fact, apparently last year, only 500 Norwegians came to America to live here, which is obviously small and was 10% lower than the year before.
If Trump is supposed to have dementia, how come he always remembers to be racist every day?
That's a good checkmate.
So they say that's the last thing to go.
Oh, the racism?
That's the last
Remember
thing.
the recent stuff. Well, one way that might play in is supposedly everybody says that he repeats stuff a lot, the same thing over and over and over, and increasingly now in smaller periods of time, which might mean that him repeatedly saying they're shithole countries isn't technically as bad as if we repeatedly say it, because I have to make an effort to say the same thing over and over. But if he's just addled, then maybe he's just a run-of-the-mill racist and not an especially terrible racist.
I'll just say this, that I really am shocked to find out he's really a racist.
Really?
He's been a racist since the moment he opened his mouth. He chased Barack Obama around for 4 years asking for his long-form birth certificate. Mexicans are rapists. Muslims chaired 9/11. I mean, you can't be a good judge if you're a Mexican. All the whole...
Those are some of the highlights.
Central Park 5.
Central Park
housing practices. It's not like there weren't any clues.
There's good Nazis.
Yeah.
I mean, he
good
said
people
there's
on
good
both
Nazis.
sides. And so I totally agree. I think the reason that this one stands out a little bit is not for specifically what he said, but because people in the mainstream media who fight as hard as possible to not state the obvious are starting to state the obvious a little bit. So, Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon were going on saying like, okay, we got to be honest. These are racist comments. Whereas a lot of the stuff that you've listed there, people bend over backwards to try to excuse or to say, oh, well, we disagree and everything, but there are honorable politicians on both sides and everything. So if this stands out, then good. And it should, because this is particular racism. I mean, some of the other examples you gave are good for this too, but this is not just a bad comment. This directly impacts the political discussion that they're having in their meetings right now. What sorts of groups will get legal protections? Which sorts of groups will be prioritized or unprioritized when it comes to our immigration policy? I mean, this affects potentially how, when he goes abroad, the diplomacy we have, deals that we make with other countries. If he thinks whole regions of the world are shitholes, then what happens when we try to enlist those countries in climate-related deals, security deals, and things like that? Economic deals, trade deals.
This will ultimately help Trump with his base.
I agree.
Probably half the country. So
I think I've said 37%. I hope it's not half. You think it's half?
Oh, so there's a lot of people who are racist who didn't vote for Trump, I bet, or some.
Yeah, that's possible.
And this will only help him. This will only because it kind of makes me giggle when we talk about he called it a shithole. Why are people from shithole countries coming? And what makes me laugh, because he talks exactly like all the guys that I used to work with, to grow up with. My brother used to be a bricklayer, and that's how those guys talk. That's how, and so all across the country right now, there are those guys going, yeah, he told the truth. People are getting on him.
He's
again.
like me.
That's what they're
getting. It's possible.
So he's straight. Oh, come on, Haiti's a shithole. That's what people are saying. Come on, it is a shit. You want to go live there? That's what people are saying right now. So it makes Trump look like a truth teller, and he's getting shit on by the liberal elite. That's what it looks like to them. Even
though, of course, labeling these countries shitholes because they're not as fancy as his golden thrones is a pretty damn elitist thing to say in the first place.
If you were drunk and you were throwing up in Trump's penthouse apartment, you'd wake up throwing up in a gold toilet. You're like, am I at Trump's house or the Vatican?
I throw up in so many of those.
Either way, it's an interesting place to puke, but where am I exactly?
You just watched the video by the Young Turks, the home of the revolution. If you'd like to get the full show, come join us and become a member. TYTnetwork.com/join.